Hello, and you have stumbled upon the Unrestricted Section for our Patreon subscribers exclusively of the podcast that must not be named. I'm Melissa.
I am Luke.
And we are joined here by our special guest, Bailey from Hogwarts Radio. Hello, Bailey.
Hello, thank you for having me on today.
And we are going to discuss chapters 6 through 10 of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So, anybody want to kick us off on this Unrestricted, connects to the entire series? Thoughts?
So my first note is something that we referenced back in, I believe it was chapter 7, and it's about the size of galleons. Melissa had a question. Are galleons really the size of hubcaps? I've never pictured them that way. And so I did go through and dig a little bit more. This is the first time that these coins are described as being the size of hubcaps. It wasn't mentioned in book 1. It hasn't really been mentioned before this. And so, I don't know if it was just, my prepubescent brain, 11, 12-year-old, reading these books pretty close proximity to each other and just always remembered it being that way. But that seems pretty cumbersome, right?
But to be fair, it's not like they're specifically talking about galleons. It's never mentioned which coins look like hubcaps. So for all we know, it could be foreign wizarding currency.
That's entirely true. It could be the Bulgarian wizarding money, right?
Bailey wins for best comment of the night. And we're, 3 minutes in. Because that is exactly the answer I was waiting for. Because, okay, so Harry's been carrying around a sack of money since he went to Gringotts back in book 1, right? How is this little kid going to be carrying around a giant luggage thing full of hubcap-sized galleons with him everywhere he goes?
Well, and how ridiculous is that going to look?
And they're all doing it. Everybody, everywhere is, it's like an airport full of money. That can't be safe.
You'd really need like a beaded bag situation for a wallet, right?
Oh, with the undetectable extender charm?
Yeah, exactly.
It would make things easier.
Except that Harry didn't know what those were until book 7 when Hermione did it. So he would have had to have a bag that had the undetectable extending charm to carry his galleons around since the age of 11. Therefore, since he did not British money.
To be fair, I don't think J.K. Rowling knew about it until book 7.
I don't care. It works for my story. I'm going with it.
Well, at least that application, because we do see it with the tents in this, that it's kind of the same thing, that magical space increase. So,
and we saw it with the car in book 2.
Yeah, that's true. It's, I think, the first application of a storing things with expandable type stuff. So,
and I got the impression that was really a Hermione thing. Like, let me take this idea and apply it to a different situation.
That could be. It's like JK had played some kind of video game that started limiting how much inventory you can carry, and she's like, I don't want that to be a question when I'm going on the scavenger hunt. So let's deal with that.
I need to carry as many things as possible.
It's like a girl going to a club in her little clutch, only it has her entire library and wardrobe in it.
Right. See, and then
that would be me.
See, and then the bag could hold the heels at the end of the night.
And a pair of comfy slippers.
Yep.
Oh,
and pepper spray.
Change of clothes for the night.
And pepper spray.
Yeah. Right. Any other big thoughts there, Luke, before I jump into my plethora of...
I see you have plenty,
notes.
So I will get my last one. We'll get my last one, and I'll just kind of play off of the notes that you guys are bringing to the table here. But
great.
Problems with port keys. The woes of port keys. Maybe we kind of put this off until the end of this book, but we have to me, it seems fairly clear delineation of how port keys are supposed to work in these chapters here. You show up, it disappears at a very precise time to a very specific destination, and vice versa. I just have questions about, are there different types of port keys that allow it to be first touch, which is what we see at the end of the maze? What are your guys' thoughts on port keys and how the rules, in my opinion, seem to change even in this one book?
How often do we see portkeys after this? Other than, I think at one point Dumbledore creates a portkey. I want to say book 5 when he sends the Weasley kids and Harry back to
Grimmauld Place.
Yes.
Yep. Before Christmas on the clothes board.
And they all have to touch it. So it's not like the first touch, it's they're all touching it. He probably said it for like 3 minutes from now.
Right. Because there's still a countdown. He's like 3, 2, 1. And in that countdown is when Harry makes eye contact with Albus for the first time that year.
Yes.
And wants to attack him. So,
and that seems to fit the rule that Arthur explained.
Right. And with all of the organization that Barty Crouch is talking about, hey, all of this coordinating, 900 portkeys or whatever he says over the country is a lot of work, when he's talking to Ludo.
Okay. So one of the things that happens at the Quidditch World Cup is that once they're done with the manky old boot, one of the wizards upon check-in kind of tosses it into a bin. One might assume then later when it says that they're catching I don't remember what it is, but they're catching another portkey back home early. I wonder if there is that return on it, if that makes sense. So all the portkeys that they collected coming into the World Cup they're also now using to transport back. Maybe there's some sort of, I don't know, inventory that they did. This one, if it came from Stout's Hill, it's going back to Stout's Hill. That would be my guess, which is why
would still follow the rule.
Right. That it was like set up that way, that it's going to arrive from this location at this time, and then it will go back to that same location. Wouldn't you think that would be easier than having to charm each object a second time? Ignoring the stuff that happens.
Well, not if you're having to keep track of which portkey came from which location.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably just, hey, we need one to go here.
Got it.
That's just it. Like, hey, here's just the next item.
Maybe if they were labeled beforehand.
Or organized better, right?
So think of it. So what we have, if you think of like in airports, we have a bunch of different airplanes leaving airports coming to one airport. Like the places when you're at one of the satellite places, it's going to know that it needs to go here and it's specifically destined from that place. But once you're at the hub, it's kind of like, well, any of these is going to work to go back to the satellite that you need to.
And the airplane that I debarked does not automatically return to the place where it came from.
Right. It doesn't, not necessarily, at least, yeah.
I'm just trying to justify later on when the Triwizard Cup returns.
Right. Yep.
Because
where it is linked between those two positions, basically. And even that, doesn't it like bring him to the front of the maze and not like the heart of it?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the first point of contention, I guess I should say, is that the Triwizard Cup is not set to go at a certain time.
Right.
So I never had a problem with that because I always felt like it was magicked different, that Barty Crouch Jr. had specifically made it a portkey to work upon touch. Like I was okay with him having messed with the magic to set that up. I wasn't okay with the return. I mean, I'm glad it happened. I don't mean that. But
I mean,
it really seems. Oh, go ahead, Bailey. Sorry.
I think the reason that it returns to the front of the tournament instead of being back in the maze, I think Voldemort probably wanted to take Harry's dead body and show it off to everyone.
But didn't he say, like, in book 5 that they didn't want anybody to know Voldemort was back?
But that was after he was kind of thwarted. He was planning on having a little bit more power with taking Harry out. So I think whenever Harry survived and got away, that kind of changed maybe what their plans were.
Changed the plan.
But I agree. I think it is. I can kind of see it both ways. But the book 5 stuff we have is, steps 1 through 3 have already happened. So it changes the mentality that we hear him describing, kind of thing.
Okay.
But he definitely sees the value in, hey, they didn't know that I was going to be a thing. Like, the secrecy around that would have been a really powerful thing, which it just... But I do like the idea of him setting it up to go back, or at least to drop the body off or something.
So let's say things work out in Voldemort's favor. Harry touches the cup alone. Voldemort gets his body. He kills Harry. And somehow, without himself going, sends Harry's dead body back to Hogwarts using the portkey.
Yeah, I don't know.
I was picturing Voldemort going back with it, being like, "Look what I did."
Yeah, and I do not remember book 5. I just remember them trying to, like, they had expected it not to be so public knowledge that
stay
he was
under the
back
radar.
right in the moment. Yes, that it was going to be more of a gradual thing that only his Death Eaters were going to know. I don't know. It's just weird. That's my speak for I have no answer. Sorry.
And I mean, I think you could easily say there are different ways that you can set it up. Just like you were saying that, Moody, Barty Crouch Jr. set it up to work slightly differently. And maybe that's a really common way for Portkeys to also work, but for the coordination effort that the Quidditch World Cup has to go through, they have to be very specifically timed.
Because you're not just making it for yourself, because what if you make it to arrive at the same time and place as another group and then...
Right.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So, and if... I think, like, for the Quidditch World Cup, if it's one person touching it, you're just transporting that one person because it's first touch. And they specifically say we're touch at the exact same time so we can both win. But, I think typically if you're going to have multiple people, you would have one of the more countdown styles.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
It's like, hey, this is going to go in 10 seconds. Make sure you're touching it. As opposed to, hey, I just want this so I can, get home at the end of the day. And, okay, I'm ready. Bam.
And I never passed my apparition test. So,
right. And also, what's the difference?
And not to mention, it's almost like a bus. It's like, okay, this Portkey leaves at 7:05 in the morning. I have to be there, or I'm missing whatever it is I'm trying to get to.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas maybe the Portkey of just instant touching is like an Uber.
Yeah, it's more of an on-demand transportation.
All right, we've got it solved, folks.
Speaking of transportation concerns, what was the point of walking all the way up the big hill and putting poor Hermione through all of that exercise when we had 4 highly qualified wizards who could apparate, that could have just side-along apparated everybody else? Like, we had Percy, Bill, Charlie, and Mr. Weasley. There were 5 underage wizards. Ginny, Hermione, Harry, Ron, Fred, George. Okay, 6. Sorry, I miscounted. Couldn't the 4 qualified wizards had side-along apparated 4 of the kids? And then 2 of them, maybe like Bill and Arthur, gone back and got the last 2, saving them all tons of time and wake up?
I get the idea that side-along apparition is a lot more challenging than regular apparition, and maybe not all of our qualified wizards are qualified enough to complete that.
It's like a motorcycle license. It's pretty easy to get a motorcycle license for one person, but to have passengers, it takes a little more proof of mastery.
You're telling me Mr. Weasley and Bill haven't been doing it long enough that they could have done it? I get but it's almost like side-along apparition wasn't invented for 2 books, and so she didn't think about it.
Well, they mention it here.
Side-along apparition?
I think so. Or maybe not. Maybe they just referenced, yeah, I thought they did. Because they ask, why do we have to walk?
And what do they say?
I'm looking.
Excellent.
I know they talk about Charlie failing.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and landing on the poor old deer.
Harry knew that apparating meant disappearing from one place and reappearing almost instantly in another, but had never known any Hogwarts student to do it, and he understood that it was very difficult. So they're still in bed, said Fred grumpily, pulling his bowl of porridge toward him. Why can't we apparate too? Because you're not of age and you haven't passed your test, said Mrs. Weasley, or snapped Mrs. Weasley. And where have those girls got to?
Yeah, so I feel like Fred was just asking, can we just do it the same way? Not, can you just take me along with you? I don't know.
But at the end of the day, Melissa, it's the journey that matters. So there's your answer.
No.
And exercise up a hill is good for Hermione.
Hermione clearly needs it.
Oh, poor Hermione.
All that sitting around reading all the time, she probably needs some cardio. This coming from me, who sits around and reads all the time and needs some cardio.
I have no problem with the sitting around and the reading. Where is the problem in this? No, I get it. I just feel bad for her and feel like they could have slept a little more. I don't know. Just me. I'm a big fan of sleep too. So books and sleeping. What more does a girl need in the world? Amos Diggory.
Nothing.
No, right. Amos Diggory was special. But one thing that he did is he told Cedric, oh, you're going to have a story for your grandkids someday. Oh, not so much.
No, he won't.
Like reading back, it's like, oh, so sad.
I know. And then part of me is like, oh, Amos is never going to get grandkids.
You know, that's why she wrote him as like overly attached, right? To make it seem like it's because it's pretty hard to develop caring about Cedric enough, I think, for how little we really get to interact with him. And so like that's a pretty easy way to like kind of roll it in like, hey, his parents really doted on him and like that's extra sad now.
Oh, I agree. I just was interested in that. Like, Yeah. We had tons of like spoilery mentions of people, but not really spoilery. But we heard about the love goods for the first time.
Yeah.
First of all, okay, I had a problem with this.
Oh, okay.
I want you all to picture Xenophilius and Luna at a Quidditch match.
Yeah.
Does that seem like a place you would find them?
Absolutely. Festive?
I don't know.
Are you kidding me? Hey, absolutely. Hanging out with a bunch
Festive,
of
I
wizards?
could see if it was Britain in the cup and them being nationalistic about it.
Right. I mean, it was Ireland, so maybe close. And Luna does
Adjacent.
try to be
She's a huge Quidditch fan. She makes a lion's head.
true. Although we don't see that yet. We don't meet her for another book. Like, that's so weird that this is the first time we're meeting Luna and she's such a huge, important character. And yet she doesn't show up for a whole nother book.
One of my favorite characters.
Mine too. She's the best.
She is.
She is.
She's in the top 10. It's really hard to narrow it down from there, but
If I had to pick
Top
right
10.
this minute,
Even picking 10 is tough.
I'd put her in my top 3. If I had to pick right, like without really thinking about it,
Ooh.
I'd feel comfortable with that.
over Dumbledore, over
Like I just said,
Hermione.
if I just had to say, like, hey, I'm not saying, I don't want to think about it.
No, please don't make me actually pick 3.
But yeah, I would say she's going to be pretty. I think it would not be difficult for me to justify it.
Okay. We also heard about Rita Skeeter for the first time.
Yeah, she's awful.
She is awful. She is literally the worst.
She is.
That's not true. No, sorry. Umbridge is the worst. We'll get there next book. She is literally the second worst ever.
Second worst, worse than.
I think Snape falls somewhere in there.
Oh, Snape
Snake can be third worst
Snape
because
is
at
the
the
worst.
very least, he has small amounts of redeeming qualities, or at least redeeming motivations. There is nothing redeeming about what Rita Skeeter does, and nothing redeeming about Umbridge.
No, there's not.
What about
Top 3 worst right there.
Fenrir Greyback? What about Bellatrix Lestrange? What about the?
I like Bellatrix.
And now we're trying to rank the worsts.
Yeah, let's just.
How about Voldemort? Has anybody mentioned him? Would he fall in anybody's top 10 worst Harry Potter villains? Honestly, maybe not.
Top 10.
Because he's not very good at it.
Top 10, yeah.
Top 10. Top 5, sketchy. Maybe top 5. Bellatrix, Umbridge, Rita Skeeter, Snape, Voldemort.
I do love that we get, references to like the Love Goods and the Fawcett's, who we hear a little bit randomly back and forth. We never really meet the Fawcett's at all. But I think we kind of hear whispers around, like, of them being around kind of thing. It's just one of those names. And, I love when she does that. And then you pick them out as on rereads and stuff.
I like that we heard about Mundungus Fletcher
Again.
trying
Yeah.
with the jacuzzi that he's trying to put in for insurance. And Percy's like, I have his number. I know for a fact he was sleeping under a coat.
Right. Propped up on sticks.
Okay. My next question is about Fred and George. I love Fred and George, so please don't be offended. How did they know that Ireland was going to win, but Crumb would catch the snitch? How is that possible? For real.
It seems out there. I mean,
Right?
no one in their right mind is going to catch the snitch if their team isn't ahead enough, or at least has enough points to win.
And I mean, it's not like they were losing by that much. Like, it's possible they could have had 2 more goals and then he could have caught it.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're like, it's not like they were already losing by 100 and like 200 points. And even if I caught the, I would need 5 more goals to even tie if I caught the snitch. It was 2 goals.
they were- In the grand scheme of things, they lost by 10, right?
Right.
Mhm.
170 to 160.
Come on, man. Like, just
I
wait
mean,
it out.
like, maybe Crumb didn't want the game to go on, and he was already injured with a bludger to the face. But have faith in your team that you'll pick it back up.
I mean, you made it to the World Cup final, so let's have a little bit of support for them, right? They're not terrible. They're not the worst
Got
in the
people
world.
making- No, you've got people making bets that the game's going to go on a week.
Right.
Like, and here it is over in a couple hours, if.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I feel like I've-
definitely questionable on Crumb's perspective.
I think I've been reading way too much fan fiction about like post Hogwarts, and a lot of it is like tells a lot about Ginny playing when she played. And there was just much better descriptions of people like being strategic about using the snitch for points. And I was like, well, why wasn't that in the Quidditch World Cup? This would have been much better.
Can you imagine JK really writing a week-long Quidditch match?
Oh my God.
Like, how many different third-party perspectives will we go through just for her to get through it?
Knowing how much she hates Quidditch, no.
It would be like, they played on for 4 days, and then...
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
And on the 5th day.
Right. Let's talk about leprechaun gold. Speaking of the twins' bet, right? And it disappears after a few hours. And we find out that later on that the whole myth of the leprechaun's, bucket of gold, like, does that help with that myth, that idea of, oh, it's here, but really it is fake? And how does that work?
I think it makes sense. That's why they're always chasing after it, because even if they do catch it, it disappears and they have to go find a new rainbow, right?
And then do you assume that they think like, oh, I must have lost it? Or like,
I guess.
Well, yeah, because like after the first time it disappears, why would you try again?
Right. Amnesiatic leprechauns.
Well, and then Ron pays Harry with his leprechaun's gold. What happens to all of that? Does Harry put it in his sack of galleons and like just doesn't notice? I mean, I know he has a lot of money, but
it must be nice to have so much money not to realize when you
not to notice that some galleons went missing.
Poor Ron.
But I feel like that would be I don't know. I know, poor Ron. Literally poor Ron.
Yep.
Well, and just Ron's reaction of, "Oh, I paid you back. Now you have to get me a Christmas present."
Yep.
Yeah, I would have said that.
I know she's not lying. That's exactly what she would say.
That's exactly what I would say.
You know what else would be nice?
Like, what else would be nice, Bailey? Getting the Christmas present you were supposed to get last year. That would be nice.
I actually volunteered to help with that and then forgot.
It's really more fun to be able to do this. Hi, Luke.
I have it.
So much fun. Okay. Mr. Weasley. So, Mr. Weasley's Muggle obsession. Do you think he's obsessed with Muggles because he sees them as equal but different? Or does he see them as sort of lesser beings to be entertained by? That's a lot of silence.
I'm waiting for
a lot of thinking. I think Mr. Weasley is just intrigued by how different they are. I don't see him as thinking that it's entertaining and almost like making fun of them. I just think that he is genuinely curious about Muggle culture, if you will, and wants to know everything he can about it.
I agree. I don't think that he puts himself on a pedestal higher than them at all inherently. I know that, I'm sure he thinks, because it really, a lot of this stems from the, oh, bless their hearts comment, right? That like, oh, they do anything just to convince themselves that there's no magic. Like, there's been a couple times where it's like, it seems like he's kind of belittling Muggle culture a bit. But like, for how passionate he is for promoting wizard Muggle relations, like, there's no way I think he actually thinks down on them. I think it's a curiosity that sparks it, but I don't think that means he thinks less of them.
Okay. I don't know if I definitely agree that he wants to learn and would like to know, and it's very different, and so it's interesting. And I also think in his own way he cares about making it not equal, not safe, but creating an understanding among the wizard kind to appreciate the Muggle world. But I don't know if he really thinks of Muggles as equal to him, because sometimes his view is like how a human might observe something like, I don't know. I just, in my hesitation, I don't think he means it badly, but it's like where I work a lot of the time, you'll have people who come from more affluent areas who want to come try and save the kids where I work, which is a lower socioeconomic area. And they don't need to be saved. They don't need your pity. They have lives that are, they live for them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, their lives are their lives, and they're as successful as they can work for and what they have. But that doesn't mean you need to pity them. There's a difference between pity and empathy. And sometimes I think Mr. Weasley's view of Muggles can just teeter a little bit there, not fully and not with anything but like the kindest of hearts towards it. Sometimes I feel just that little bit of he could verge over into that.
I can see definitely where you're coming from, and I don't really disagree with you. I'll just add that he could be coming from a place of ignorance, right? And I think that's kind of what you're getting at. He's coming from a society that does think that is inherently ingrained in wizarding culture is, we are better than them, but we have to stay secret for them because they'll take us out. That seems to be a very fundamental view of Muggle-Wizard relations from the wizarding side. And so with that, he is doing his best. It's not perfect, but he, like you're saying, he has the kindness of hearts to do it. He just is coming from a place, there's no book on it, probably not really. Mm-hmm. And kind of as we've discussed, maybe he found a passion for this later in life. Maybe he got kind of put into this department and never realized how much he would enjoy it. It was a late find for him, and he didn't have Muggle relations class at Hogwarts because he didn't know that he was going to need it. And so, again, I don't think I'm disagreeing with you. I'm trying to couch it in the society he is coming from a bit.
I think you said it right in that. And that's exactly what I was trying to say without knowing what I meant. That's
why we're such a good team.
Right. When you come from a place of not knowing, you try to help in the best way you can or empathize in the best way you can. But sometimes your best way of empathizing for you doesn't really help the people that you're empathizing with. Mm-hmm. And not that he is doing any harm necessarily. And quite frankly, his attitude is a million times better than a lot of wizards.
Right.
But his isn't perfect either, is all I'm saying. Like he would be like, step 1, everybody get here. Now, step 2 would be like, how do we move even from that? I think that was kind of my thought.
And I mean, you even see the things he does do to try and understand Muggle culture. Everyone in the wizarding world looks at him like he's a nutter. Mm-hmm. Like, why would you possibly want to understand this? But I think with his curiosity of Muggles, it almost makes it weird that he doesn't know what Muggle money is, or at least enough to figure it out.
Or how to light a fire.
Yeah. Or he's just so intrigued with matches that he keeps dropping them because it makes him giddy.
When everybody else is like, forget it, I'm using magic.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it.
We must do this the Muggle way.
Except the tent is awesome. Way better than Muggle tents. But yeah, like he's trying. I think he's just picking the wrong things. Or at least not picking the right, I don't know, time, place.
Well, think about it. Like you have a dad, right? With this huge group of kids. It's like, familiar. Hey, we're going out and roughing it, right? And it's a dad that didn't grow up going camping.
Oh, okay, kind of all right, yes.
So like he's interested in it. Yes, he's learned about it, but he doesn't have the practical hands-on of actually doing it. It's learning a language.
Read about a big thing.
What was that? Sorry, internet. I didn't hear what you said.
I said, I have read about this camping thing. It sounds fun.
Right? It's exactly right. It's like, and I know that I need to do this, and I know these are like the steps to do it. That doesn't mean you know how to do it, right? I mean, I guess that's maybe the mentality I have with it. And he's, like you said, he's fascinated by these things and maybe a little like overexcited because of hey, I get a chance to do it. I get a chance to do it. Yeah.
And my point wasn't just on the camping. It was just sort of Arthur Weasley's whole kind of Muggle obsession. I just want to be cautious as I read him on not taking him as the best it could be. He's the best there is, but not the best there could be in general, not just in this situation.
I think that's fair.
You ready for some Winky talk?
Let's get our Winky on.
Okay. Number 1. I know we don't talk about the movies. I get it. It's like Fight Club. However, Winky is one of the biggest things that the movie gets wrong. This particular movie.
Do they even include Winky?
No.
Right?
Not at all. There is no house elf anything, I don't think, in this movie.
There's
because they even cut Dobby out from helping Harry in the second task. There's nothing. Cutting out Winky cuts out so much from this book.
Mm-hmm. And because we have, in the opening scene of that movie, we've got Barty Crouch Jr. standing there in the Riddle house, right? I mean, which really makes kind of almost all of that storyline fizzle out of like the mystery of it, because that he's whoever this guy, unnamed character is around, as opposed to there's like no indication if you don't know what to look for of wrongdoing going on. And I still have a hard time. I'll be completely honest. I think Moody, Barty Crouch Jr., one of the best teachers Harry's ever had. And that is, it's ridiculous to me, like, thinking back, like, oh, that was a different character the entire time. Mm-hmm. Like, why did he do such a good job teaching? I don't get it.
Like an actual dark wizard?
Right? Like, and he's actually teaching them pretty valuable stuff. I don't know.
Well, that's very much like the Durmstrang. Oh, we don't just teach this defensive stuff. That's what he teaches them. He teaches them practical applications of dark arts and how to actually. I mean, he does teach how to defend against it, but I wonder if it's like, I'm doing this. First of all, he's doing it for Harry because Harry has to have some of that specifically to survive the Triwizard Tournament. That's number one. That's the mission. 2, he's got to sell it. He's got to sell the job, right? He has to actually be a decent teacher. Otherwise, people might catch on.
Does he?
He
has to go holy school year. That's pretty easy, apparently.
I'm just saying.
There's no oversight.
We have Lockhart.
Lockhart standards, right? But it's not like he can just sit there and start hexing them in class all the time. Wait, hold on. Umbridge. Okay, yeah, no, I don't know where I was going with this. Teaching is terrible at this school. Oh, right, I remember that.
Barty Crouch Jr. is awesome. He's a great teacher.
Other than being a dark wizard, really, he's not so bad.
He does an amazing job teaching them.
He's really empathetic for his own reasons to Neville, right? I mean, that was really, really well done. I have a lot of movie thoughts.
Number 2 behind Lupin.
I think that is pretty easy.
And you can't hate a guy that turns Draco into a ferret.
Exactly.
You got to get half a gold star for that one just automatically, right? Like, that's a given.
But yeah, leaving out the house elf stuff with Winky, it's a big miss by the movie. I completely agree. I love the depth that it brings to, again, more filling out the entire world and like, hey, there's this big point of contention that only Hermione is really becoming aware of. Yes. And it becomes a huge thing for her character development to be, which fits a lot. You know, we have the big Percy versus Hermione stick in the mud kind of argument. Like, hey, Hermione was kind of a stick in the mud. And now that she's seeing this social injustice thing, she's kind of becoming more lenient and, hey, there are things to fight for because the rules aren't always right. And
because they don't always apply to everyone.
And that turn of her character, I think, makes her that much stronger in the long run.
Yes.
And it's not just, oh, Hermione's super powerful witch. Like, it gets old, which is all the movie does.
Let's spend screen time where the 3 friends sit together and laugh.
Instead of adding valuable plot.
Already written for you. Okay, sorry. Moving on.
Deep breaths.
Letting go of the movies.
Letting go of the movies.
I fought it out. It was fine.
All right, we've made it past it.
It was very stealth of Crouch to get Diggory to allow him to deal with Winky on his own. That he was able to sort of arm twist Diggory into letting it go. Because then, no matter what happens, Winky won't be questioned by anyone else. And even if she's let go or anything, his secret about his son is still safe. I don't like that guy.
It's pretty sly.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know so much about that Crouch man.
Yeah.
But the older one. Obviously, the younger one is fantastic.
Oh, he's great. He's a great guy. Just
best teacher ever.
Just has one little fault.
But yeah, Barty Crouch Sr. is pretty effective at doing what he needs to do to, one, kind of cover his tracks of these questionable things that he's done, right? And also make sure that nobody ever thinks that there's anything negative about his family, even with like the old flying carpet. He's like, you know, my grandpa or whatever had an Axminster that fit 11 or whatever, and he's just like, but clearly not anymore. Like, don't you even get the idea? And even Harry...
That was well before they were outlawed.
Right. Even Harry, in his inner monologue, is like, made it pretty clear he didn't want anyone to second guess that he'd ever been on the wrong side of any law. If Harry's noticing, it should be pretty obvious.
Okay, Mrs. Weasley's clock with the hands.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love the clock. But we know in the future, most, if not all, except Fred, of her kids get married. Sorry, Fred. Right. R.I.P. Fred. Does the clock magically add hands when her children get married or have kids?
I would think you'd have to add your own hands to it.
Okay.
See, I would
or would you have like a second, like when Bill gets married, Bill gets a secondary clock?
Yes. And he takes his hand there. His hand goes to a new clock. That's what I was going to get to. And then his family clock starts.
Or, I mean, I don't really. So does his family clock go to his house?
I would think so.
And doesn't keep it?
Yeah.
Well, I could see Bill having his own, but Molly still having Bill on hers.
Right. But wouldn't she also want to know about her grandkids if they were safe? Like maybe she has a grandkids clock and an in-laws clock. And who knows?
Let
I mean,
him
this is
leave
a
the
woman.
nest. Jeez.
Here's the thing, though. This is a woman whose brothers were killed. Her parents are gone. Her son was killed. Her friends. I mean, she's a woman who, quite frankly, has earned the right to be a little overprotective.
Nah, too much. Take it easy, Mom. We love you.
No, sorry. The mom in me is holding out on this one. Of course, I don't have grown children yet. Mine are still trying to get there. All right, my last one. This is it for me. I like the subtle nod to the twins working quietly in the corner of chapter 10, already trying to get their money back from Ludo Bagman.
Right.
I just wanted to point that out. I thought that was it was a good slide in, something that nobody would notice unless you were going. That was not done to plant it early. That was done specifically for rereaders.
And also when Harry, Ron, and Hermione are running through the forest before, I think it's before or right after the Dark Mark, you see a group of goblins kind of talking furiously together, and then shortly after you see Ludo Bagman. So that's kind of a funny nod too, of like, hey, there's already some contention here, but you wouldn't, know. It just looks like a kind of a coincidence.
Right. I always like the secondary stories going
yeah.
on. And the whole, like, who is Ludo Bagman, which kind of ties into what happens in the main storyline, because Winky's, tells us that Ludo's a bad man. But his bad man happens for a completely different, unrelated reason.
Did anyone here ever really think that he was that bad of a guy? Like,
no.
Like, it's kind of like the Percy Weasley story in 2, right? It's like, he's not, no one really thinks that Percy Weasley is really involved. Like,
right.
I didn't take the bait then. It's neat. It's kind of funny to see some of the kind of in-house politicking, I guess, of like the Crouches and being like, hey, even Winky doesn't like Ludo Bagman, and kind of that allegiance kind of stuff too kind of gets brought into it, from house elves to masters, and which is completely different from what we see with like Dobby. This is the first indication of like a loyal house elf.
Right.
For lack of a unfortunately more accurate term. But I never once was like, should I really be worried about Ludo? Like, no, I don't think so. Yeah, he's trying to help Harry out a little bit, but I think it's just kind of like uncle fatherly type, like, hey, I know you did not ask to be in this, and you're kind of out of your element, or a little, outmatched. I want it to be kind of fair, like when he's like offering him help.
I never took it as that, but I also never took it as like he's the bad guy. It was more like he's the sleazy guy that if you're walking to your car at night by yourself, you're going to keep your key in your hand just in case the sleazy guy tries something. That's what Ludo Bagman feels like. Well, you wouldn't. But that's the feeling I get from Ludo Bagman.
I could see that.
Mm-hmm. That wraps up my thoughts.
Bailey,
anyone else have
any notes over there?
Yes.
I want to talk about how the Weasleys leave Harry and Hermione to set up the tent. Because they know muggles, so they must know tents.
And fires.
Yes. It makes no sense. It's like saying, you live in this specific area, so you know everything about it.
That's true. Or different spin. The Weasleys, I mean, I don't know about you, but we were very good at getting out of what our dad asked us to do. Not our mom so much, but our dad, especially when dad was alone, because our dad's a lot like our parents are a lot like the Weasley parents. And so if dad would ask you to do something, you'd kind of blow him off, right? Am I wrong, Luke?
I will not comment, because I know he listens. I will
That's
not
true.
confirm or deny.
He does, and we love dad. But I could see them being impervious to his either requests for help or like just completely not regarding him as needing help at all. You know what I mean? Just why would I help my parents? I don't help my parents. It's like a kid thing.
They're just capable.
Right. They're parents. Aren't parents able to do everything all the time? So you just kind of let them. There's no idea of asking your parents, hey, can I help you? That's how I always took it anyway.
Well, and it could also be Harry and Hermione have grown up in different situations from the Weasleys, and they maybe have more respect for Mr. Weasley, so they're like, oh, okay, let's help him.
Plus, they're guests.
Yeah, whereas the kids are like, oh, it's just Dad having issues. He'll figure it out.
Right. Oh, Dad's just playing with his muggle stuff again. Okay, great.
Right.
Can we put up like magic? No? Okay, then I'm out.
Yeah, it's almost like the Weasley kids feel entitled to the tickets and everything, and Harry and Hermione reasonably feel like they didn't have to bring us. Like, we at least have to pitch in, right? Like,
and they really didn't have to bring them.
Right. They really
just throwing that out there. I mean, besides plot, but whatever.
Right.
And why doesn't a magical tent set up differently than a normal tent? Shouldn't there be some sort of issue?
I'd set up once you...
Yeah, like a special spell you have to cast once you've erected the thing so that it actually works.
Well, or does that fall back into what Luke and I have been discussing for years now on this show of the difference between the user and the doer of magic? Because the user of the tent is not necessarily the doer of the magicking of the tent. So
right. The tent inherently has the magic because someone has done it to it.
Yes.
Right. And
it's
maybe
already been magicked.
Maybe that magic really only shows up once it is set up in that normal form. Like, say, to kind of use a different example, again, you could think of the beaded bag because it's a similar type of spell. But say you had a sleeping bag, just for an example, that has the same thing. Maybe it doesn't work when it's, rolled up and everything, but once you unroll it and are ready to use it, that's when the spell becomes activated or accessible. So you have to have it set up, because say you take the beaded bag and you fold it up if it was a larger version of it, and you fold it up into a small thing, you really can't access it, kind of thing. So maybe it has to be, in its final form, regular form to be used. I don't know. I'm kind of justifying, because it's a good question. I hadn't really thought about that.
Now I'm just picturing someone in an extended sleeping bag and it being rolled up. What happens?
Well, it'd be a lot like Newt's suitcase, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You just climb in and have a whole house.
And
it folds
back. Why don't all wizards live like that then?
So they might want more permanence. They like the idea of a land location than just a traveling location over back.
Well, it wouldn't have to be traveling necessarily. It could be an emergency cellar that's just expanded and no one will ever know it's there.
That would have been convenient for the Underground Railroad.
Yeah, or for atomic bombs. Oh, bomb.
Oh, also true.
Oh, hey, look, my house.
Right.
Right. Now in my head, the burrow is one of those. It just is perpetually open.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I think. Because, it's obviously put together with magic anyway. So I'm sure it folds up into something. Maybe a trough or something. Some sort of wooden box that you can carry around.
Maybe that's how Hogwarts works. The front gates is actually an opening to a magically expanded place. Maybe that's how unplottable stuff works. I don't know.
Maybe.
I could get behind this.
Yeah.
Getting back to
Hogwarts is really just gates.
Yeah, that's why it looks like an empty place, because there's nothing there. It doesn't exist anymore. There. I like it. I can get behind this. Maybe that's a must not tell lies. We're actually thinking about doing Hogwarts Castle.
All right, write that down
soon. So that's definitely being added. Getting back to the tent, say. So if it didn't, the magic was always there, whatever this portal face, I guess, for hey, now you're in the magic space, hey, you're out of the magic space. Say that doesn't go away. How could you even fold it up? It seems like you just fold it up and put the pieces inside the portal, and where does it go? It just disappears. It goes into what, non-being, that is to say nowhere and or everywhere. Thanks, McGonagall.
I don't know. I just went with the Doctor Strange movie version of, think of it as a locker that you set your stuff in out in the space and you open it up and pull it out when you need it. But that's just me.
Yeah, fair.
I was gonna say, Luke is just nodding along because he hasn't gotten that far in the Marvel universe yet.
Oh, but he will. Big fan.
We're working on it.
We're working.
Excellent. Finally. Took you long enough to get there, Luke. But let's just be glad you're coming at all.
What else you got, Bailey?
Oh, what else do I have? I don't know. That was my big one.
I liked that one.
That's a good question.
I guess we could talk about Vila.
Oh, yeah. So, what are your thoughts on Vila and I guess maybe the boys' reactions or?
It seems
everyone's?
inherently wrong for the Bulgarian team to bring Vila when they have that kind of a reaction. It's almost like poor sportsmanship. How do the Quidditch players react? Like the Irish team?
I think that's exactly why they brought him.
Well,
That's horrible.
Which is definitely poor sportsmanship.
To this.
Yeah, it's pretty poor sportsmanship for sure. I do love that even the ref is distracted by him at one point. It's just for comedic value. It's just kind of like, yeah, they're pretty effective apparently. And that's exactly why they were brought.
So let's think broader, though, with Vila. So not just World Cup, although I maintain they will never be allowed back after that atrocious, what is the word, interference that they caused. But
debacle.
That's right. But we find out later that Fleur is a fourth Vila, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and we see that Fleur falls in love with Bill. So that's possible, but she's also 3/4 human. So there's that too.
So she only 3/4 loves him.
Well, that's my question. So how then can you trust that if the guy falls in love with the Vila, is he actually falling in love with the person or with the aura or magic, whatever that surrounds said Vila? Or is it that every guy does, so the Vila just takes her pick, and that guy is just happy for the rest of his life? Unless she gets
Potentially silly question. Are Vila categorized as creatures? Or is it just like a special heritage that they have?
There are no Vila in Fantastic Beasts.
Okay, so it's just something that you hail from.
Yes. So it's kind of, yeah, like what is the lineage really? I mean,
Right.
They're just a different type of wizard. They're still human for the most part, or
They just
are
have
they?
a special magic.
Okay. According to the HarryPotterWikia.com /wiki/Vila. Vila are semi-human magical beings, beautiful women with white gold hair and skin that appears to shine moon bright. When angry, Vila take on a less pleasant appearance. Their faces elongate into sharp, cruel-beaked bird heads, and long, scaly wings burst from their shoulders. So they are semi-human magical beings.
Like mer people, like centaurs, and that's a big point of discussion in like the introduction and forward for Fantastic Beasts of definition of what is a beast. So basically the difference between beast and beings, we now ask ourselves, which of these creatures is a being, that is to say a creature worthy of legal rights and a voice in the governance of the magical world, and which is a beast. Early attempts at deciding which magical creatures should be designated beasts were extremely crude. I would have to look and see if they're mentioned in here, but I know it specifically talks about centaurs asked to be considered beasts and not beings because they set themselves in like a third, because they're neither. They're like, we're our own thing, so just leave us alone, is where they're coming from. The Mermish, the exclusion of the Mermish people. Let's see what this is about. The centaurs who, under Muldoon, had been classified as beasts were now under Madame Clegg, defined as beings, refused to attend the council in protest at the exclusion of the Mer people, who were unable to converse in anything except Mermish while above the water. So I think it's a perfectly reasonable question, because even in Fantastic Beasts, it's questionable. Like, hey, this has been a point of contention of where this classification really falls. And so it's difficult to say, I think.
So then if you can be... Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
If you can be part Vila, could you be part mer person?
I think so.
Theoretically, barring like logistics of that.
Gillyweed solved.
Same thing
I was
with
thinking
centaurs.
more like anatomical parts.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. But I think Vila makes it a little easier with that. Do you know the word Vila is never used in the movies?
Really?
That's what the trivia on my webpage says. And also that they are formulated after Or like German mythology.
That makes sense.
Which makes sense, like luring males to bash themselves upon the rocks.
Sirens.
Also known as the Lorelei.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's
a origin
Greek,
of that word.
Greek thing.
Yep. All right. Anything else?
That's all I got.
Then I think that wraps us up. Thank you to all of our Patreon listeners for joining us here on our Unrestricted section. Make sure you check out our show on your favorite podcast catcher, which I hope is Radio Public, since every time you listen to Radio Public, everybody benefits.
Find us on Twitter at NotNamedPodcast. Send us an email, a digital owl, if you will, at notnamedpodcast@gmail.com. Check out all of our other shows at thepodcastthat.com, which, if you're a Patreon member, you've probably checked out, and we appreciate it. Subscribe to all of our shows and rate them all on iTunes, and check us out on YouTube. Big special thank you to Bailey Riddle from Hogwarts Radio and Riddle Writes. Where else can people find you, Bailey?
You can find me online. I have a book review blog, riddlesreviews.com. I have a bookish Instagram, if you will, at Riddles Reviews, and I am on Twitter at Riddle Writes.
We look forward to talking to all of you again in our next Unrestricted section for chapters 11 through 15. Until that time,
stay imaginary.
Thanks.